Hey crew members, this is Captain Barbosa and I have a quick tutorial for you on how to be the engineer in Pulsar Lost Colony. This is a great game that mimics a lot of the jargon that comes from Star Trek. That's why I love it. So let's head over to the engineering station so I could give you a quick tour. Over here we're on the Intrepid class ship. I chose this one because it's one of the smaller ships and it's easier to handle and great to learn on. So here we are looking at 3 of the engineer consoles on the bridge. I want to direct your attention to the middle one first. This is how you allocate the power of your reactor to the rest of the ship. If you hold the space bar down, you're able to actually interact with it just like a computer screen, sliding up and down the power usage. If you let that go, you'll pretty much be aiming like a first-person shooter, the power sliders. Above this is your main concern, is the core temperature. Now, on a stock reactor, the temperature is pretty low, the high-end temperature where you're reaching danger. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to maintain this temperature and make sure that the core temperature doesn't overload. And it's your job to advise the captain when you're about to overload so they can adjust the strategy when they're in combat appropriately. Now, there's a lot of ways you can route power and keep this core down. For one, you can trim systems, so if you're in full-on combat and all the sensors have been used, you can lower the science lab and make sure that that core temperature stays low and that the science lab isn't using any extra energy. If your shields are low and they're constantly taking a beating, you're going to want them high. You want shields at max so that way they recharge the fastest rate that they possibly can. And your weapons, if you're trying to escape a scenario, you may want to lower the weapons to keep your shields at max and not max out the core temperature. You'll have to apologize to the weapons guy, but that'll get you out of there quicker and you'll be able to initiate jump, which I'll get to in a moment. If you're in combat, you're going to want to raise those weapons all the way, and you're going to have to monitor your engineering because sometimes the pilots get carried away and they start using all sorts of maneuvering tactics which don't even make sense. You'll have to advise your captain to lower the engineering because they might be getting carried away. So, in a nutshell, that is how you maintain the reactor core temperature. This is your baby. This is the heart of the ship. You want to make sure it doesn't overload itself, and I will show you what to do if it starts doing that in just a moment. Now, over here, if you need some extra power, you can actually micro-maintain a lot of the ship's things. Atrium healing is if everybody's hurt, you can go to the science lab and get some healing. You probably don't need that during combat unless people are getting burned. Your oxygen generator, if you're getting desperate, that's the only time you'll turn this off. Just make sure that your crew is healthy enough to handle no oxygen on the ship. Climate control in patch 9.5 isn't really working right now, so you could always turn that off. In the future, I'm sure it will work, and if it's off, you'll probably freeze on the ship, so make sure your crew actually goes and gets their exosuits. Spotlights, this is the headlights pretty much of the ship. Turn these off, you actually save 400 power, which is a ton. So if you're going in combat, why do you want to have headlights on anyway? So you might want to turn that off. And then these are all combat related options. You want these on for most part unless you're trying to leave a system without overloading and you need some extra power. So go ahead and you can turn some of these off, except interior lights. They are not combat related. They just conveniently light up the bridge, and this is probably the most annoying feature on the ship because trolls love to toggle the lights. Leave those on. Over here, your captain, if he's a good captain and likes to roleplay with you, he'll always tell you to initiate jump prep. This is your go-ahead to use core temperature and some engineering and some science to get the ship ready to go to warp. The reason you want to wait for your captain to tell you to initiate warp prep is because this takes energy. So I'm just going to go ahead and initiate the jump prep so you can see. There's jump calculation and warp drive charge. You see how the temperature is going up in our reactor? It's using the science lab. If I up the science lab, that will go up a little faster, the calculations and the warp drive prep. And if I put engineering up all the way, it should go a little faster too. And then once all these blue bars are full, you're ready to jump. And you'd click that, you tell your captain, we're ready to jump, and he'll tell you to take it to warp. Now, once the jump is done, it'll stop using core temperature, as you can see here, and the core temperature is going down. Just be wary of that. As an engineer, like I said, this is your main job. Make sure the core does not overload and explode the ship. It's game over if it does. Now I'm going to turn around and show you a little panel here. It's called the Coolant Reserves. In the Coolant Reserves, if your temperature is skyrocketing but you still are in combat, this is your emergency. So you can go ahead and put the Coolant Reserves on low, which is good at maintaining core temperature, and you can put it on high, which will actually start bringing the core temperature down. However, you do not have an infinite source, as this Coolant Reserves bar indicates, so you're going to have to maintain this as well. If you do use some in combat, make sure that when you and your crew stop in at a repair station or some sort of vendor, you ask your captain to make sure you top off the Coolant Reserves, and I'm sure he'll be happy to. But just remind your captain, because sometimes he forgets. I'm a captain and I forget all the time. So like, Captain, can you top off our Coolant Reserves? It'd be greatly appreciated. He'll be like, thank you, engineering. I appreciate you reminding me, and he'll buy all the Coolant Reserves. So that's what this is right here. Now this jump fuel, this is actually on the bridge. This is an indicator for the engineer to tell the captain, well, you've only got so many jumps left, and every time you warp it takes a different amount. However, this also serves a different purpose when you're actually in engineering. We're going to go down there in a second. So let's roleplay just for a moment. Say we're in combat and you're juggling all your stuff here and you're just not getting enough, and the science officer says, Captain, I can boost shields. And then the captain agrees. Go ahead, science officer, boost shields. And then the science officer's like, I need to load a capsule. That is your job, engineering. You have to load the fuel capsule. You see this panel here? You load it, but there's no point in loading it because you can't actually throw it into the science resources. So usually in combat, you're on bridge, you can see out the windows, it's beautiful here. But once you go to combat, you're gonna have to run your ass down to engineering. So let's go down these doors here, all the way to the back of the Intrepid, to these big glowing yellow engineering lights. That's definitely an ode to the engineering and the next generation. So here we are. Actually, let me come back to the beginning. We are in the heart of the ship, engineering. Here is your reactor core, looking all sparkly and beautiful. And you'll notice a lot of the same panels are down here. However, there's one big switch right over here. This is your manual program charging station. This is where you load the capsules. So if engineering, excuse me, not engineering, science was saying load a capsule because he wants to run a program, you're going to have to go ahead and load your fuel. There's a capsule right there, and then you pull this handle here and you load that capsule and it'll go right over to science, and you'll get one of your special abilities up and running again without having to go to warp. So you're going to be busy down here in engineering during combat, loading capsules, maintaining the core reactor, and then another thing. Now you can possibly get infected with a virus, and you don't have time to purge the virus, and the anti-cyber defense from science isn't working too well. Well, we've got these 3 manual override switches right here, which are very dangerous in ignorant hands. This switch over here to the right actually turns off your shields. If you look at the Hyperion, you'll notice that all the shields up there in the top right are turned off. I turn it back on, shields are back on. The second switch here is your computer. This is how you're going to purge the viruses usually on board, but this is only the operating system. It might not get rid of the virus. So what you'll actually do is go ahead and throw all these damn switches here, and then you throw the main power, which is the first one, and everything goes off. It's like red alert, and you're gonna have to turn this back on real quick and boot everything. So let's go ahead and turn power back on. Power has been restored, and then you're gonna want to throw your computer system on. Can't throw the computer system on without priming the warp core or booting the ship OS. Let me tell you that first. So boot the ship operating system, then you can pull lever 2, then you can prime the warp core. And then once the warp core is primed, go ahead and put shields back on, and you're back in business. This is risky! Super risky! You know why it's super risky? Because if you're looking in the top right, your shields are off, and you were just taking hull damage the whole time. So this is one of those things that you'll advise the captain to get as much distance away from your assailant as possible. Wipe the systems real quick, and then go ahead and boot the operating system, and then prime the warp core. Now here is a really cool thing for you Star Trek fans, and I am a Star Trek fan, and this cracks me up that they put this into the game. sometimes the core inevitably will overheat. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's no signal on the operating system because the science officer has not rebooted the ship. So on the science officer station, they can do the manual override, and now the operating system is back. Let's go back down. So your core temperature may just go into the red. It's maxed out. It's red. You're going to see a ton of red lights on the ship. Something is wrong. And if you have nothing else to do, you're going to have to eject the warp core, which is this right here. I said warp. I meant reactor core. This is Pulsar, Lost Colony. So what you're going to have to do is take the safety off first, which is this switch over here. Core safety toggle. You can only toggle this once the ship and the core is in the red. You'll pull that lever. Once you've pulled that lever, then you can do the emergency core eject. You'll see the core leave the ship. You'll say bye-bye. At least you're safe, but you can't do anything. And hopefully your conflict is over. So, what do you do once the core has been ejected and you can't do anything? Call out for a distress signal, and you can pick which distress signal you use. Since we're on the Intrepid, Colonial Union signature would be a safe bet. Might draw some bad guys, or you might get quicker help if you use a general distress. Then you'll turn that on. Make sure you ask your captain first to do that. He might get mad and have a better plan. And that would be engineering in a nutshell. One quick bonus: there's an extractor here, and I will leave that up to the players that you're in game with to learn how to use this extraction, because what this does is it shows you items from a derelict ship in space that you can take from that ship. You'll be able to see the items here, and there'll be sort of like a gambling percentage at the bottom. I'm sure if there's a captain or anybody else on board, they'll know how to deal with that. You'll see that when it comes. And so for the most part, that is how you are the engineer on a ship. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Captain Barbosa. I'll be putting up more videos about how to play this game on my channel, so subscribe if you like Pulsar Lost Colony, and I'd love to do more. Captain out!